Welcome back to another episode of Between Two Clouds. My name is Danny Hunt. Our guest today is Darren Anderson. Darren is a sales director with Cato Networks out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Darren, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Danny. Great to be here.
I'm glad you're here. So Darren, you and I had a conversation the other day, and I think we both have what I'd consider to be fairly OCD tendencies. I always judge somebody's true nature of OCD by whether or not they organize their socks and shirts by color. So I pass that question to you.
Oh my gosh, on an OCD example?
Do you do that?
I'm a notorious copious note taker. So every evening or morning, I have a clean sheet of paper in my notebook. It's my comfort, my warm blanket. And if I don't get it done right and it doesn't look neat and pretty, I on occasion start from scratch. So yes, I'm OCD as well, my friend, and I'll leave it at that.
I think that qualifies you. So what's your story? Let's talk a little bit about Darren.
Sure. So you and I have gone back many years, so it's nice for us to come full circle. But as I was thinking of my professional career, I've been doing the tech industry thing for roughly 25 years. Started out slinging disk drives for Seagate out of college from University of Georgia, and got into what was very exciting, which was innovation. And I've seen innovation throughout the different hops I've made. From Seagate, I went to Xiotech, which was a startup going after virtualization in the SAN market, and I was able to up level, my selling skills and start, looking at solution selling, complex selling versus slinging disk drives. NetApp was my next, big jump, and that's where I met you. I was there for 13 years, and they were looking at being, the top NAS guy, and they wanted to be a SAN guy as well, and they started to converge NAS and SAN into a multi-protocol unified engine, and that was my first taste of a convergence story. So had a variety of roles there, and then I jumped over to Cohesity, which was in its early seasons of data protection, data management. And lo and behold, that was another convergence story. The CEO founder, Mohit Aaron, founded Nutanix, which was the first hyper-converged model of storage and compute, kind of similar to the convergence of SAN and NAS. And Mohit jumped ship and started Cohesity to do it again with backup software, backup targets, tier 2, tier 3 storage, archive, etc. And we were really good at rapid recovery around ransomware. And I started to learn more about the cybersecurity space from that, kind of, tipping our toes into that portion of risk mitigation. And after 6 years at Cohesity, I was like, what's next for me? What's the next innovation that would be appealing and something I could frankly stand behind? And I started looking at the SASE category. As I've learned, there is a boatload of acronyms in the acronym soup of cyber. And I started to investigate SASE and jumped over to Cato roughly a year and a half ago. So it's, as you've asked me to think about my past, the light bulb kind of went off that I was like, wow, it's interesting. And many of these different hops, that consolidation, convergence kind of story rang true.
Yeah, I've enjoyed working with you throughout that journey. So you talked about SASE. Is it still the cool hip buzzword? Is SASE still the new orange?
The new orange. Yes, I was telling my daughter about SASE, and she was like, that doesn't sound like a technology term to be sassy. So we have a lot of fun with that. But yeah, secure access service edge. Maybe they should have had a better label for it. But Gartner actually coined the term, I believe, back in 2019. And as I did my research on SASE, I realized that Cato, being a 10-year-old company, already had the architecture in place well before the buzzword was adopted in the field. But I really saw another convergence story, which SASE in short, Danny, is a consolidation or convergence of a bunch of networking elements and a bunch of security elements provided as a service. So it's in that same narrative of reducing complexity and hopefully making the people that we work with day in, day out, make their lives a little bit easier. So I felt that kind of fit my DNA of what I've been doing in my career so far, and it's been a heck of a ride the past year and a half.
Yeah, we spent a good bit of time in that space, and I think your message about reducing complexity and what it does in terms of management is certainly a big driver in what we're seeing. So in that space, let's talk about Cato. My first experience or my first introduction to Cato was through Johnny Vaughn, and there's a million stories that I could share. I'm sure everybody has a million stories as well. We'll save those for another time. What brought you to Cato?
Well, yeah, shout out to JV. He's been a wonderful wingman as I've been not only learning the cyber market, but just the different channels at which we can sell Cato. But maybe going back to your OCD comments, I haven't moved around too much in my career, and I like to be thoughtful and educated on where I want to go next. And I looked at, the SASE quadrant, if you will, and I'm proud to say over the past year and a half, Cato was in the challenger position and made one of the most dramatic moves up and to the right in Gartner's SASE Magic Quadrant. And I love the company that we keep. So the 800-pound gorilla in the SASE category is Palo Alto, and we're right behind them. We're number 2 in that position. So very validating that I made the right move, and hopefully we continue. But to dive in a little bit more specifically on why Cato versus the others in this space, I wanted to do something different, and I did a research with a lot of the usual suspects in this category, and it came down to build versus acquire. So, SASE, to me at least, not a technologist, but for me, SASE is very similar to zero trust. You don't go into a client and sell them zero trust, but you put the enablers in to adhere to a zero trust principle or end state or vision you're trying to seek. And I think SASE, give or take, is kind of in that same sport, Danny, where we're not selling SASE out of the gates, but we're looking at different use cases that can enable that client to, over time, at their discretion, start to converge and provide some better shared context and get to some level of a SASE end state. So the build versus acquire is, fortunately, 10 years ago, our CEO and founder, Shlomo Kramer, who founded Checkpoint, who cut the first check at Palo, and now he sees Cato as kind of the third generation of this, network security market, said the only way we're going to keep up with scale and become as sophisticated as we should be to keep the bad guys out is to start from scratch. So they started building the SASE architecture from the ground up. And instead of acquiring things to layer onto that SASE story, they embedded it. And I felt that was the light bulb moment for me, was they had a much cleaner, elegant design on how they can offer these different networking and security services versus, a portfolio, which is acquiring SD-WAN, acquiring DLP, CASB, name your acronym, and stitching that into a platform or portfolio. I liked that Cato was looking at solving the problem in a different way by building versus acquiring. So that caught my attention to move over.
Yeah. As a nerd or a technologist, depending on how you want to look at it, I understand the appeal of SASE and what you guys are doing over there. But let's maybe change that lens to the C-suite. What are they concerned about? What are they looking at?
Yeah, and it ties into some of the education I've received from our leadership. And one of the first things I did after the extensive training, which thank goodness I needed because I didn't know how to spell all those acronyms, I went out and met with a few of the CIOs and CISOs in my backyard, along with reading a bunch of the case studies and the quotes and the anecdotes that the C-suite has shared. And one of the statements I really enjoyed is Cato wants to be the best at simplifying the operational model. So the question, if you back up, is not the what, meaning, who has all the features in DLP or all the features in RBI. Those are the whats. And as you all know, being in this industry, everyone's going to have a leapfrog and feature war over that. And I find that to some degree to be a little bit distracting, or the noise of our industry. What I love about the validation I got from the CIOs and CISOs, Danny, was the how. How can I operate in a much easier, intuitive model? How can I remediate and respond to threats within a matter of minutes, hours versus days? How can I deploy the next new widget or feature in this stack within a matter of days versus quarters? And that was a gut check for me, was instead of getting mired into the whiz bang nerd stuff that you might have referenced there, but to take a step back, because there's tool sprawl, there's not enough people to hire to make sure all the patching and CVEs and upgrades and all of this appliance driven model, it takes a lot of grunt work to get that done. And the C-level suite has said, cry uncle, we need to find a better way. And that's been a common response when I've asked, why did you choose Cato?
Yeah, no, I like the way you position that. And the whiz bang nerd stuff certainly appeals to me. So, speaking of whiz bang nerd stuff, this wouldn't be a relevant conversation in 2025 if we didn't talk about AI and then the role it plays and what you're doing. So, let's at least comment on that for a second or two.
Yes, and I love that we waited so long to bring up the term AI. A bunch of my colleagues were out at RSA. We had a fantastic showing, and of course, agentic AI was the buzzword of the day. Well, luckily, being a 10-year-old company, relatively new compared to some others that have been around for decades, that we had AI and ML embedded from day one. So a lot of the intelligence and the threat feeds and all the cool stuff we can do within our cloud engine is built with AI in mind. I think because it's all embedded in one single code base, we're able to innovate and augment that strategy with Gen AI, Shadow AI, and whatever other future AI terms come to play. But I think that's top of mind for a lot of the C-suite as well. To go back to your previous question, is how do I make sure I block, allow, proceed? How do I have the visibility to go after this next wave of AI innovation? And I think that goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, Danny, which is, to whatever degree, 20%, 50%, 70%, you can start to converge and improve the shared context for your security team. So you have better visibility. You're going to be able to understand where you need to open those doors, shut those windows, what have you, to the rogue AI or permissible AI tools that you'd like your team to leverage. So the neat sizzle of that within Cato is we have a group called Cato Control, which is our threat labs, and our chief security strategist is constantly looking years out to see what do we need to embed in our cloud engine to make sure, a great term we always use is skate to where the puck's going to be. And that's where our cyber team is really good, is they're thinking about how can we not acquire the right solution, but enable that same visibility in our stack to tackle AI. So it's a growing problem and a growing concern for all of us.
Awesome. Darren, glad we could be working together again, man. Excited that you landed over at Cato, and appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with me today.
Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I'd love to throw one thought or counsel to the broader audience is pump the brakes. SASE has a lot of things to do. If you're looking at networking topologies from SD-WAN, VPN, MPLS, or you're looking at the security acronym SOUP, or you have some remote access issues you'd like to stabilize, look at SASE. Hopefully it's Cato or someone in our category, but I'm a little bit of an idiom guy outside of the OCD stuff, and I love the term of stop playing checkers and start playing chess. Because as you look at these different assets you have on the floor, you have a moment in time to take a fork in the road and put the right solution in place that you can build upon, so you can now start to begin this SASE journey as well.
Awesome. Again, appreciate you, Darren. We'll chat soon.
Good to see you, Danny. Thank you again.